So now would it be a good time to compare and how this varies to snapshots and how snapshots integrates with that?
That is a great question for Ben to answer.
Oh, you want me to talk about it? You want me to talk? Can I erase your diagrams?
Feel free.
All terribly boring. So snapshotting. How does snapshotting work? That's a fine question. So the concept behind snapshotting is that we allow you to take a running or not running virtual machine, and we allow you to take point-in-time images of the virtual machine, no matter what it's doing, and you can then return to that point in time at a later stage. So from a simple timeline point of view, let's imagine that this is my VM, and I'm running it. And as I'm going along, first I install Windows. And then once I've done that, I take my first snapshot. And then I install Office.
Where's the games?
I'll get there. Okay. Go install Office first. Okay. I take another snapshot. And then I install a bunch of service packs. And I take another snapshot. And then I can even do things like decide, actually, I wanted to do something without doing the service packs. I can come back, start from this snapshot, and start an alternate line, as it were, and here I'm going to install my favorite game.
I knew you would do that.
There you go. And the great thing about this is it's very easy from a user interface point of view. You're just running your virtual machine at any stage. You can go take a snapshot. You can even do it like in the middle of installing an operating system. The virtual machine keeps on running through it. You never see any downtime. And on top of that, once you've taken a snapshot, you have the flexibility to always go back to there. And as I've shown in this diagram, going back to a snapshot doesn't destroy your current state. So even though I installed these service packs, took a snapshot, went back here and installed these games, this snapshot will still exist and I can still go there, and I now basically have this treed structure of snapshots. So the real question is, how do we do this, and what's happening under the covers, and what's the magic?
Let me add one thing.
Yeah.
So snapshots don't only just apply to software that you actually write into the VHD, but it's also the virtual machine configuration. So you can go back, add additional processors, change the RAM, add additional NICs, take a snapshot. So when you revert back, it not only goes back to the data in the VHD and the information that was in memory, it goes back to the configuration file that you had at that time as well.
Which can get terribly confusing if you go over the top.
What was your question? I was going to ask you to explain the difference between online and offline snapshot as well.
Oh, I wasn't going to dig into that. So we have terminology that we use, which is we talk about an online and an offline snapshot. And the concept here is the way these are presented to the end user through our user interfaces. They're all snapshots. But the concept here is that you can take a snapshot when a virtual machine's running or when it's off. It doesn't matter, no matter what state the virtual machine's in, you can always take a snapshot. So we call an offline snapshot one that you've taken when the virtual machine's turned off. So if we come down here, from a snapshotting point of view, a virtual machine is really comprised of three things. There's the memory state. I'll use some nice diagrammatic stuff. And so this is when the virtual machine's running, what's actively in the memory and what's in the device registers and in the CPU registers and everything. There's, oh my god, we'll use a circle. There's the configuration. And this is, how many network cards have you got assigned, how much memory have you got assigned, how's the virtual machine configured. And finally, I'll use a triangle. There's the VHD. And this could be multiple VHDs, but for the purpose of this diagram, I'm just going to stick with one. So what happens is you create your virtual machine, and you start running it here, and you're doing your installation of Windows. And at this stage, you're running off your VHD, changes are being written directly to the VHD, you're running off your configuration, and your memory state is changing. And then you request to take a snapshot. So here we have snap 1. And there's a couple of things that happen here. The first thing that happens is we immediately pause the virtual machine And while it's paused, we create a differencing disk for the snapshot. We actually call this an AVHD, which stands for automatic VHD. So it's not something we expose through the UI or expect people to need to manage, but it's essentially a differencing disk with a different name. And once we've created that AVHD, we change the virtual machine, hook it up to use the AVHD, and we start it straight up. And this whole process of changing the AVHD is unnoticeable to humans. It's under 100 milliseconds in time that it takes to make this change. So you never see this pause happen. Then, once we're back up and running, we create a copy of the configuration. I'll call this C1. And that's a copy of the configuration as it was when you took the snapshot. So from this point on, you're continuing to run on this configuration file. You can make changes to it, and it's not going to affect your snapshot. And the final bit, and this is the real bit of magic, is what we do is, while this virtual machine continues to run, we actually make a backup copy of the active memory at the point in time that you took the snapshot. And the way we do this is we have the architecture built and constructed so that we can go through and put notification events on all the memory in the virtual machine so that we can start trying to write it out to disk. But if anyone inside the virtual machine tries to change a piece of memory that we haven't written out yet, we're able to hold them off for a moment, rush over, back up that chunk of memory, and then let them go through. So what this means is we're able to back up the entire memory while the virtual machine is still running. The effect to the end user of us doing this is there's this small period of, you'll see, slightly slower performance inside the virtual machine. So usually when you take a snapshot, you'll take the snapshot, and for about the next 15 to 20 seconds, you're going to see things are a little bit slow and a little bit sluggish because we're running around and touching the memory. For average use situations, it's actually really hard to notice because we've done a lot of performance work. So if you're just using an application and running around, you have to be doing something fairly intensive to notice. My favorite test to see the difference is I bring up command prompt and I do a recursive directory listing of the C drive and then take a snapshot. And you can see that for a couple of seconds there, the scrolling of the text will slow down a little. But then once we're done, you're up and running again. And so you can go along and you can continue to take these snapshots. And every time you take a snapshot, you'll get another configuration, another copy of the memory, and a new AVHD will be created. So as you're going along and you're taking these, I'll just draw a couple of snapshots so we can talk about some of the more advanced operations. So let's say I've gone along and I've created three snapshots. So we have a couple of interesting properties around snapshots. The first one is we have this kind of design goal that snapshots are these read-only entities. You create a snapshot, and once it's created, the only thing you can do with it is you can either apply it to your virtual machine, or you can delete it. You can't go back and change any settings. It is a point-in-time image. So firstly, let's talk about deleting. One of the things we wanted was we wanted you to be able to safely delete a snapshot without it having affect any of your other snapshots or your currently running virtual machine. So if in this diagram I were to, I've taken my snapshot with Office, my snapshot with Windows, my snapshot with Office, my snapshot with my service packs, and I've decided, I'm happy with my service packs. I don't need this snapshot which just has Office without the service packs. What I can do is I can go back and I can say delete the snapshot. And the first thing that's going to immediately happen is we will get rid of the memory and the configuration, and this snapshot will no longer appear in the UI. The other snapshots are there, and at this stage we still have this differencing disk, the AVHD. And what will happen is the next time this virtual machine is turned off, we will go back and we will check through the AVHDs, and we'll find any that exist but don't have a snapshot